And the centuries are actually originally based off of the idea of like military centuries. But the richest 10% of Rome held 90% of the vote. So they could basically decide no matter what, who was going to have a political position. If you didn't have money or you weren't literate, you didn't have the ability to kind of do a lot. So that goes until 31 BC. And then from 31 to 476 is the empire. And the empire in the west, in the east, we end up calling it the Byzantine Empire, but they wouldn't have called themselves that. They would have called themselves Romans. That goes until 1453. So it's basically like a almost 2,000-year history of what the Roman Empire was.
Wow. Wow. And we're at 250 years.
Yeah. And I think that's something to consider is we're not as old as when I was studying in England. I studied at New College, Oxford for a bit. And if you look at a lot of the buildings there and just how old they are, and our oldest buildings aren't as old as their newest buildings a lot of times. It's American society just isn't that old.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting to see. I mean, I think you're going to tie a lot of parallels to what we're seeing today.
There's a lot.
Towards the end of the Roman Empire. And a lot of people do say, history repeats itself, or like you say, it rhymes. And I think we see that. But,
it was actually Mark Twain that coined that phrase too, so I can't take credit for that.
One question I have, just from diving into our own history.
Yeah.
How accurate do you think history in the Roman Empire actually is? And the reason I ask this is you see all these institutions just in America, just in this lifetime, that are lying and changing history. Things are being recorded, not how they fucking happened. In a lot of this is to protect the institution. And you think about it, and I've just dove into a couple of institutions. But there's got to be close to 1,000 institutions in this country.
Yeah.
Whether it's churches, government, whatever it is. And just in the SEAL teams, there's a lot of recorded history that is just a flat out lie. And so it's like, well, if the SEAL teams did it, then this did it, and this did it, and this did it. And it's like, okay, every institution is doing this.
Yeah.
This is just one country. So then think about all the institutions in the world. And then you think, if every institution in the world is doing this and lying and manipulating history, and we're just one little sliver in time that's infinite. How do you know? Because the Romans had to have been manipulating history as well, and the Greeks,
that's a pattern
and
that
everybody.
doesn't change. It's a pattern that doesn't change because it goes back to who's in power, right? And it goes back into who's literate, right? If you look at Rome, less than 10% of their society is literate, right? So if you're not literate, you're not going to be writing. And I think that's an important point. So if you look at a lot of the history you're getting, you have to understand what the power structure is at the time, because the power structure is going to dictate what the history you're getting is. And you can look at that in any society. But if you look at, my degree is actually in the propaganda of the first emperor, Augustus, because he had to basically make people think they were still living in a republic, even though it didn't exist anymore. So one of the major things he does is he starts commissioning works of literature. So the Aeneid is written during his time. The famous Roman historian Livy, who writes during that time, writes his Roman histories during that time. There's a poet named Ovid who wrote what's called erotic poetry, which Augustus didn't like because he was very naturally conservative. So he's kicked out of Rome. So a lot of those things were very manicured in ways. So that's the history you're getting is often going to reflect the power structure it's written in, because you don't want to piss off or upset the people in power, and you don't want to piss off or upset the emperor, right? You want it to be something that describes things to give people a certain vision. And it's that way in the Republic too. You want to show the Republic as a powerful, something that honors tradition. And if things don't honor that, well, you're not going to write about them, right? You want to, the 476 fall date of Rome is often something that's heavily debated as well. And as I said, Western Rome. The emperor in the East, Justinian, in the late 6th and early 7th century, is going to decide that